Hi, and welcome to today's Engaging for Missouri webinar. I'm Alice Roach from the Division of Applied Social Sciences at Mizzou, and I will be your host today. With each of these 30-minute webinars, we intend to share research-based insights that leaders like you can apply in your own work to benefit and strengthen the state's agriculture and food system, hospitality sector, and communities. Today, we have a panel of co-op leaders here today to speak about the co-op's contribution to communities. Before we begin the discussion, I want to share a few housekeeping items. First, we'll close the webinar today with a Q&A session. Those of you who connected via your computer may submit your questions in the chat screen. And if you connected via phone today, then you may email me your questions at rocham@missouri.edu. If you encounter any technical problems today, then you can let me know by either submitting a comment in the chat screen, or you can send me an email at rocham@missouri.edu. And last, we'll make a recording of today's presentation available. You can look for an email from Zoom that shares more about where you can access that recording sometime tomorrow. And you can also find an archive of all of our previous Engaging for Missouri webinars on our Division of Applied Social Sciences YouTube channel. So with that, we'll transition to the topic of today's webinar, titled Co-ops Contributing to Communities, a Missouri Institute of Cooperatives panel discussion. Moderating today is Kristi Livingston, who is the Missouri Institute of Cooperatives Education Director. So thank you to Kristi and our panelists for being here. If you could please unmute your microphone and start your video, then we can begin today's discussion.
Thank you. On behalf of MIC, it's my pleasure to welcome you and to express our appreciation that you're joining us today. MIC throughout its history has had a very close relationship with the university. A member of the Ag Econ faculty played a key role in the discussions that led to the formation of MIC more than 50 years ago. For over 30 years, MIC has contracted with the Ag Econ department in DAS for program management. And that's an arrangement that continues today. And it's been my honor to serve in that coordinating role. MIC is a collaborative effort of cooperatives serving rural Missouri. That's including farm supply, farm marketing, grain marketing, processing, milk marketing, energy, rural utilities, and farm credit cooperatives. The purpose is to provide educational programs for cooperative leaders and youth on unique issues and aspects of being a cooperatively owned business. We are very fortunate today to have 3 members of the MIC board as panelists. If time permitted, each of our nearly 100 members has an equally compelling story. In the interest of time, we're going to let each panelist give a brief self-introduction when they give an overview of their cooperative. And we're going to begin with Scott Gardner from FCS Financial.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Good morning, everybody. First, a little bit about me. My name is Scott Gardner. I've worked for FCS Financial for 36 years now. I live in Chillicothe, and my title is Vice President of Marketing and Sales. Really enjoyed my time with the cooperative. A little bit about FCS Financial. We are part of the farm credit system. We were chartered in 1916, so we've been around for over 100 years. We serve over 26,000 members across the state. We cover 102 counties. There's a part in the Boot Heel. There's 12 counties down there that we don't serve. That's served by another farm credit cooperative at that time. Financially, we're about a little over a $5 billion institution with about $1 billion in permanent capital. So we're strong financially, which is very important in the ag industry. One thing that was really unique is that in 2007, we began making our first patronage dividend. And that first dividend was around $3 million statewide. This last year, we actually returned over $30 million. So a lot of return going back to our member owners, and we're very proud about that and being able to help the farmers and ranchers. One of the things I want to talk about that's very near to me and the association, and that is our work with the young beginning farmers. In 2014, we started a group to try to identify a program to help the young beginning farmers. We came up with what's called the Connect program, and just a high-level view of what that includes. There's really 4 areas that we focused on. First, we understood that it was going to take more than a loan for a young beginning farmer to succeed in today's industry. So we included 4 areas. One was knowledge sharing. Education is a key component. So we started really a lot of different avenues using different channels around education. There's a 2-year study program that our young beginning farmers can be involved in. We have a statewide conference that's there. Plus, we offer some local education as part of that. So knowledge sharing was the first part. Reflective credit standards. Agriculture is a very capital intensive industry. We understand that young beginning farmers are not going to have the same financial strength as a tenured producer. So we made some special guidelines, credit guidelines for the young beginning farmer. Owner equity, we make some lowered those levels. That's requirements on that. Capacity, it still has to work, but we definitely lowered the margin that was needed. And we also look at a special view of student debt. If somebody's coming out of college, we don't attribute that debt towards the owner equity requirements. The third piece, communication. There's no doubt in today's youth, there is a different channel for communication. So we opened up social media, and texting is extremely important when communicating with the young beginning farmer. So that was the third component of Connect. And the fourth one was really big, and that's representation. We've always had a group called the Stockholder Advisory Committees. That's a channel for our member owners to have a direct discussion with our board and our leadership. With the Connect program, we established a Stockholder Advisory Committee group that's just young beginning farmers. That gives them a voice. They have different concerns and interests, so we made sure that they had that channel to have a direct voice to leadership. So it's been a great program. More than 150 people have gone through the 2-year program. We're excited about it, and it continues to grow. So a little bit there. Elizabeth, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Shea, and I am the Central Area Manager for Dairy Farmers America, and I've been with DFA for 8 years. Our headquarters is out of Kansas City, and we used to be on the Missouri side, and then we just crossed the river here 4 years ago that we're actually headquarters now on the Kansas City, Kansas side. And so I come into the headquarters when I'm not out in the field, but when I specifically talk about central area, it's kind of just here in the Midwest, making up a portion of that being split between Missouri is actually in both central and the southeast region. And just kind of display of what DFA does. DFA is the world's largest raw milk supplier. So we are nationwide here in the US, and then we obviously then supply milk outside into a global platform as well. And so what that makes up across the whole US is 12,500 members that then we represent. And then just kind of take that more just specifically into Missouri and kind of more into my role. So in Missouri, that is 750 members that we represent. That are our member owners that we market milk for. And just to kind of put that into more perspective, just here in Missouri in the last year, we produced 93 million gallons of milk. So think about that gallon of milk in your fridge. We produced 93 million of those. And if we just kind of break that down just by, how many people are in the state of Missouri, that's everybody, and I mean everybody in the state of Missouri drinking 15 gallons of milk in year, each of them. So just to kind of put that, like I said, in perspective for what we produce here in the state of Missouri, and then like I said, we are nationwide. Just to kind of talk, like I said, just to take that. So we do market milk, but we also do own our own plants. So we own 96 plants across the whole United States, 5 of which are here in the state of Missouri. And so we do everything from marketing members' milk, providing farm services to them, that transportation then to get it to our customer. And then, depending on if it's our customer that we're supplying milk or if it's our own plant, then we're taking that, we're processing it, and we're moving it down to the consumer for you guys to enjoy that dairy product. And, we think of traditionally, when we think of dairy products, we think of, like I said, the milk in your fridge, or sour cream or ice cream, of course, but just some other things that it's really hard to kind of almost just because of DFA and what we do to come up with a product that has dairy in it that maybe we don't participate in. And so some of those that you may not think about is we actually make a lot of the cheese powder that goes on like Doritos, for instance. That's us. The milk that goes into Starbucks Frappuccinos, so the glass containers, that's our milk, and we actually even bottle that at the Cobot facility in Missouri there. And then even just down to like milk chocolate, some of that is our milk powder that goes into that. So just a little bit, that you may not think about as being milk that DFA or the dairy farmers in Missouri do have a part of. And then just to kind of talk about our grassroots structure, how we're made up with these member owners. So DFA, as I mentioned, I'm in Central, and Missouri is actually split between Central and Southeast. We are 7 regions. And within each of those regions, we break up into districts. And so within those districts, then they have an elected council member, a delegate, and a resolutions. And what that allows you to do is both be a part of the area, and then those have the opportunity to then get elected up to the corporate board. And so really from multiple different layers, from our corporate structure all the way down to then the area, down to the districts, that it really allows our members to get involved from the grassroots all the way up. Sean, you want to take it from there?
Oh, Sean, can you unmute?
Technology is a wonderful thing when it works, but all of us are cooperatives on here, and all of our goals are to make people's lives better. And in Southeast Missouri and the Boot Hill, that's what we're trying to do with essential services with electricity and broadband. And when we talk about contributing to the communities, this past year has been a great example for all of us. As a matter of fact, what we had to do through COVID. In our case, we've seen our growth just blow up because we're doing broadband. We're providing fiber fast internet to the home plus electricity. Our services in the last couple of years, we've gone from providing about 16,000 services with electricity, and now with broadband, we're pushing 26,000 services now in the Boot Hill between all the things that we do down here. And I think when we look at the community, we're all making a difference out there. We're all doing things to help our communities. And in our case, to be very humble, last year we had a couple of food drives out there where the employees of Team SEMO, I refer to them, they actually donated the money so that we could have food drives to help our communities. But when we look at the economic drivers, or we look at what we're doing to really change the community, fiber by far is the biggest thing that we're doing in this area. People want broadband, they want to work at home. And as COVID, who knew we're going to have COVID? But now that we see with COVID coming in, we know that there is a big need for that as well. And I think the electric cooperatives across in Missouri, and the ones that are tied to Associated Electric in Springfield, there's 58 cooperatives that are part of that family. We work extremely hard to keep our rates low and keep things reliable. The polar vortex was a big example of that in February. We got close to having rolling blackouts, but those who are served on the cooperatives never experienced that. Those that were served by other people, as you saw in other states, they experienced blackouts. So we to try to make people's lives better. There's a lot of things that go into that, but we just keep pushing forward, and it's fun to be part of the cooperative family. And Kristi, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you to each of you for that overview. And in this next round, we're going to delve deeper into the breadth and depth of cooperatives and their members' commitments to the communities. And I'll just start us off by saying that collectively, MIC's members provide over $1 million in scholarships annually to the youth of Missouri. And so we're going to go through the panel to hear about some of their innovative programs. And we're again going to start with Scott.
Okay, thanks, Kristi. I mentioned before that education was very important to FCS Financial. And to give you an idea, in 2012, we actually reached out to the Missouri VOAG Teachers Association and provided a survey. And we just asked them, what is there that we can do or provide that would be very helpful to you and what you're doing as you prepare the next group of leaders for Missouri agriculture? And overwhelmingly, the response was they needed new curriculum. A lot of the curriculum they were using was actually from 1988. And it needed to be updated. We reached out and worked with a private company called Vanslyke and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with Leon and Keith and that group, and said, what would this entail? They give us the outline on what we could do and how we could be involved. We worked with those two groups and some volunteers from both the private sector and the public sector in the education in putting together a new set of curriculum that was modular based, that was available online through the Missouri FFA website, and that could be updated or changed based on that module structure. And actual real life situations were used for the backbone. It covered everything from economics, marketing, sales, and personal finance. It took a couple years to put it together. It was rolled out free of charge to all Missouri VOAG teachers across the state with great fanfare. I think even today it's widely used. It's been added to, even with a piece from the Missouri Institute of Cooperatives around cooperative education was a module that was added to that And more recently, we actually received a request around exploratory ag for the middle schools. There's no doubt that kids, when they get ready to go into high school, making decisions what classes they want to take, a lot of times they may not have that opportunity to know what's involved with vocational agriculture or FFA programs. So that exploratory ag program, that middle school program, said we don't have anything available. So we're actually just finishing up the third set of 2 modules each year for the past 3 years that we'll be rolling out under the same structure that's modular based, so that the instructors can pick and choose which module they want to cover. And it's everything from agribusiness to food sciences, animal sciences, the different programs, and really just provides that flavor, that first touch of here's what agriculture is. So a lot of it, we're a big believer in education and very happy to support and work with DESE and Vanslyke in that program. So we're excited about that. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Scott. So just to kind of take off from where I landed with the grassroots, and just to kind of, discuss how we can make the next essentially generation of leaders and going on from both in the cooperative, but then also out into the rural communities. So one of the things that we do participate in is we do have a vibrant young cooperators program. And so from there, they can get, really involved in the cooperative and really, basically, like I said, create the next group of leaders, as they then become, part of the resolutions, delegates, and then further on to council or corporate board. The next thing then on top of that is a lot of our members are also involved both on industry, different boards, but then they also do get involved within, their community, whether that's school board or so forth. And so they can take a lot of those skills that they do learn, both from those cooperative or even from the community aspect, and use those on both aspects. And then I mentioned about, just how many different, plants that we do own, and then, just the number of members. And I just want to signify, when I do talk about, in Missouri specifically, we have 13 different customers, and then we talked about the number of farms. But the other aspect of that is just how many haulers it takes in order to move that milk. And I just want to recognize that all of that also has community impact out in those rural communities that is supported by agriculture and specifically the dairy industry. And then just to kind of talk, Kristi mentioned about scholarships, and we do have DFA Cares, which provides scholarships out for youth, both at the undergrad and then even post-grad levels. We have multiple different levels of scholarships that each year come available in January. And those are for those that are going to stay in the dairy industry in some aspect, across nationwide. And then during COVID, we also created the Farmers Feeding Family Fund. And what that did was it raised over $500,000, both from staff putting in donations, members putting in donations, and then also some of our customers putting in donations. And what we did with that money is we turned around and we gave that back to food banks in order to buy dairy products for them in rural communities as needed. But they also were able to put and buy out some fridges, because as you can imagine, yes, dairy does need, if you're buying, that milk does need to be in a fridge. And so not only do they need it in the school and the food banks, but they also need the capacity in order to have those. So, and then just some examples. We do have an accelerator program that allows for innovation, and we do recognize that in order to keep, dairy relevant out there in the communities, we do need to keep innovating for both our farmers' benefit, but also for consumers. And so that's just some of the ways that we continue to keep providing back for our members and also the communities that they're in. Sean?
Yeah, and I'll be quick. I'll be brief here because I want to get to some questions, and I already see that we have one there, and I posted a video in there to answer that question. But let me talk about this from a standpoint of workforce right now and getting out into our communities. We're seeing all types of places now that just don't have the staff, and so it's really important as cooperatives that we learn and try to teach the youth, at least give them some skills to get out there. And I want to focus on 3 things. One, Operation Roundup. We all have the opportunity to do this, where you round up to the next dollar, you take those funds, you put it in a not-for-profit, if you will, subsidiary or whatever foundation. This year we gave away 84 scholarships at $74,000, and that's thanks to our members who did that. But since 2008, the cooperative's given back almost $1 million in scholarships. And I think that's a simple, easy way to encourage kids to go to vocational or go to college or whatever. I got a thank you note yesterday from a young man who's going to welding school, and he was just appreciative of that. The second thing is the ABC Connect program. And this is locally here, and I know you don't all serve broadband, but we were able to provide an ABC Connect program during COVID for families who couldn't afford Wi-Fi. And so what we partnered with the local school districts, 16 of them. If they knew somebody who was struggling, we actually went out, installed the fiber for them, tied it to their school device. So they couldn't necessarily watch Netflix, but they could do schoolwork at home. And that was a big deal for us. And I think other cooperatives around the state are doing that as well. And then the other thing is free hotspots. We have over 23 public parking lot free hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots, where people can do education. And I think we all have to keep our focus on the youth of today, because a lot of them aren't getting mentorship. They're not getting coaching. They don't have good family. Their family lives aren't the best. And we have opportunities to coach and mentor those people to help them become a driving force in our communities. And I just encourage all of us to do that. So Kristi, I'm going to give it back to you and Alice so that we can have some questions here.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for sharing an introduction of yourself and your business and how you are contributing to your communities. I want to get started with a question posed to all of you. All of your organizations participate in MIC, which intends to provide education on the cooperative form of business. But what's one practice or philosophy that you think organizations or businesses not structured as co-ops can learn from the co-op model? Scott, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I think one of the things is working together, and one of the principles is definitely working with other co-ops. And really, in the last couple of years, collaboration has been a key thing. Everything expense-wise, whether it's technology, whatever it may be, the expense has really gotten high for a lot of businesses. Working with each other, collaborating in that can not only be more effective, but it can be more efficient and a better use of funds. And I think that piece is really effective and probably could be used more by the private sector than much like what the cooperatives are doing today.
And I would just jump in there real quick and just say that we haven't, the co-ops tend to be more humble, and having some experience in the corporate world where we tend to blow our horn a lot. In the corporate world, we're almost too humble. And I would encourage people to learn to tell their stories better. And I think all of us can do that. And I think we all have a great story to tell. And so I think learning from the cooperatives to take some of the humbleness and add that to your tell your story, I think there's an opportunity there.
From our perspective here at DFA, I mean, if you were to go around and ask each of the employees what they enjoy about working for the cooperative, it would be that they have that relationship knowing who their owners are, and it's who you know who you work for, and that would be that connection is just really strong here. And I think it is seeing Scott and Sean shake their heads, they're agreeing with that as well.
And the word I'm thinking, Elizabeth, is mission. We have a mission.
Yes, yeah. Very much.
Excellent. Thank you all for those responses. Elizabeth, this question is directed to you. Is there still free milk for schools?
Yeah, so USDA has actually extended out the money that they have available in order not only for free milk, but it is for free meals. And that does go through even for summer school. So I think you're going to see some of those schools that, much like last year over the summer, they had free meals and you could come in and get those. I think some of the school districts are potentially going to do those as well this summer.
Great, thank you. And then Sean, would you like to talk a little bit more about what allowed the rural electric co-ops to not be affected by blackouts? I know you mentioned that video, but is there a key point that you wanted to share there?
Yeah, and I'll say this very humbly because we were within seconds of having rolling blackouts. But and speaking for our cooperative brothers and sisters in the electric world, success doesn't come overnight. As all of you know on this, you're on here for a reason, to learn, to gather, to grow, to do something. In the co-op world with electricity, there was a lot of planning that went in before the polar vortex, and we were able to control our own destiny in the sense that Associated Electric is a powerful organization. It's a well-oiled machine. It has a lot of generation, but this is the first time we saw a cold area, if you will, from Canada all the way down to Texas, and that really challenged the whole grid, if you will. And there's just a lot of people, but ultimately our members, the actual people who use electricity, listen to our message that we said, please conserve. They actually turned their thermostats down. They shut lights off. They conserved. So at the end of the day, they really helped us avoid rolling blackouts, and we appreciate that on behalf of the entire cooperative family.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I have another question for you. All businesses had to adapt in the past year because of the pandemic. So what's an adaptation that your co-op plans to keep going forward and one that it plans to neglect?
You want me to take? I'll just take it. I'll take it real quick and be done. We didn't have drive-throughs when COVID started, and we never actually closed our offices. We did close our offices, if you will, but we never stopped coming into the office because our business is a little bit different in the sense, and maybe people worked out of their trucks or we spread them out. But within a few weeks of COVID starting, we actually built temporary drive-through facilities at our offices, and today we're actually building permanent drive-through facilities, and we're already seeing. The percentage of members that are using the drive-through has blown us all away. And I think that's going to continue to go. And I think our members they want to know us, but I think they're going to keep their distance. And the business is going to change a little bit. But we just had an annual drive-through, our annual meeting. We normally have that for about a 2-hour period. This year, we spread it out over 10 hours, and we had almost 800 guests and visitors come and join us. Typically, our annual meeting would have 200 or 300 people. So to see almost a 3 or 4 times fold there, that was incredible. So things are changing, but we're all adapting to it.
Yeah, awesome. Scott or Elizabeth, do you have thoughts to share there?
Elizabeth, go right ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think about is honestly what we're doing right here is a virtual meeting. That's the number one that comes to my mind is 2 years ago, if you would have asked me about getting, all of our farmers on a virtual meeting, I would have said, no, they need to come in person, and that's how we can conduct business. And I'm holding a lot of council meetings, or even just in general informational meetings where guys are now out in the tractor and they're figuring out that we can do it in different platforms. So I can see that we are going to have more in-person meetings and get back to those, but I do see us maybe potentially having some hybrid models where you can participate both virtually and in person. That's going to be much of a change for us.
Yeah. And I would echo that, Elizabeth, as well. And the other thing for us is that it forced us to find a new way to do business with our member owners. Electronic, whether that's DocuSign, whatever it is, was so not, and it wasn't foreign, but it wasn't the go-to because everybody was used to that drive in, do your business, go back home, or do it on the farm, the kitchen table, whatever it may be. Because of COVID, it says, no, you've got to find a different way. And not only was it accepted by both parties, but really made it very efficient and effective. And we proved to ourselves that this is a model that will probably stick around just because of preferences by some people in doing business this way. So I think that was a positive that came out of it actually for us.
Excellent. Well, we have time for one more question, and it's from an attendee. Regarding youth engagement by co-ops, what do you find is the biggest hurdle or misconception, or perhaps the biggest opportunity in how youth perceive and interact with co-ops as they become adults?
I'll jump in there real quick. I had a mentor once tell me that, Sean, as we get older, we tend to ask more questions because we realize how little we know. I think we all have to remember that the youth are wrapped up in what they're wrapped up in right now. And for them to really focus on what a cooperative is or why I should care, they're young. And I see the same thing with families who have young kids. They're worried about getting to the baseball game, or they're worried about getting to school, or they're just worried about putting food on the table. And as we get older, people will support the cooperatives and they'll come into us. I don't think we don't need to stop trying to educate them and encourage them to participate and be with us. But let's not be the glass is half empty there, in the fact that they'll come around and they'll support us, and we just have to keep doing that. But as we get further and further away from 1938 in the electric business when they were all started, those generations are passing along, are passing off, and we just have to continue to educate. But I think the member services, the things that we all provide here as cooperatives, we reach out and touch our members, if you will, in a different way, and we just have to keep doing that in a positive way.
Yeah, I'd like to echo kind of what Sean's saying there. I mean, one of I mentioned about the ROC program, and one of the biggest hurdles is there is interest in coming, but the opportunity to actually attend, because, they need to be back on the farm. They're, doing the day and day. out, or at the same time, taking care of kids, just depending on that age group. So it's hard to get away. But just to kind of loop back to what I just talked about with the virtual meetings, I think that's maybe one of the interesting ways that we will be able to maybe bridge that gap where they will be able to attend virtually instead of actually having to be there as we had previously perceived.
Yeah, and I would echo both that. The one thing that I would say is that if you look and listen to what Sean says, what Elizabeth has shared, and all the other co-ops in Missouri, we're more engaged with the youth today as a cooperative than we ever have been before. So those things, whether it's scholarships, whether it's educational pieces, whether it's providing presentations to the local 4-H, FFA, whatever it may be, co-ops are more engaged with our youth today than they ever have been. And through that engagement, I think it will drive questions. Where Sean was at, they'll want to know more. It's like, well, who are you and what are you doing? So I think that we're kind of very quietly and slowly building a very big following in the youth today through cooperatives.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much to all of you. It's time to close today's webinar, but I appreciate Kristi being our moderator and our three panelists, Scott, Elizabeth, and Sean, for sharing their time and their perspectives today. And thank you to our audience for joining us too. When you exit Zoom, you'll see a post-webinar survey will load in your browser. If you'd please consider responding, we'll use the results to improve the webinar experience and also brainstorm future webinar topics. Again, you should receive a recorded copy of today's webinar via your email within about a day from now. Our next Engaging for Missouri webinar is scheduled for Wednesday, June 16th. Dr. John Cruz will present about the economic viability of expanding fresh and processed fruit and vegetable production in Missouri. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All. Have a good day.